All right, this week's guest is Glenn Caldwell of NAL. Glenn and I are talking about insurance coverage, third-party insurance coverage during this COVID-19 crisis, and just generally speaking, why owner-operators could use a product that replaces WSIB. So with that, let's get into the interview. Welcome to the Dog on It Trucking Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Harris, Safety Dawg, and when it comes to trucking safety, the dog is on it. I am so privileged to be able to sit and discuss with a variety of trucking influencers a wide range of trucking topics, and you get to hear their perspective on an enormous range of issues. Please, if you would show your appreciation for the podcast by leaving a thumbs up, a comment, a rating, depending on the platform of your choice that you're listening or watching with, it would help me so much raise the profile of this show and bring it and make it available to even more listeners. So thank you very much. I appreciate you and your time that takes. Now, let's get on with the show. Hey, Glenn, welcome to the Dog on It Trucking Show. How in the heck are you?
I'm doing well there, Chris. How are you doing?
Pretty good. You know, we're probably like you, all locked up in the house and, COVID-19, we're in the middle of this thing.
Self-isolation is hitting everybody. We just got back from Mexico on the Friday, the 13th. And so we've been kind of in lockdown mode for a couple weeks ourselves. So I'm hoping by the end of it, my wife still likes me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways I'm blessed because of my wife's business. I get to come here to the office where she's a dental hygienist, so she's been closed for 2 weeks already.
Yeah.
So there's no traffic in this building at all, and I'm the only one in the building. So I get to leave the house, come to my office, sit in my office in the basement all by myself. But it's good, you know.
Good, yeah.
Hey, tell us, Glenn, tell everybody about yourself and what you've been doing. And I'm really interested in your history of trucking insurance or the product that you are selling to independent operators.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris. First of all, thanks for having me on. I've been watching the episodes, and they've been very informative. Maybe give you the history of NAL. NAL's been in business now since 1955. We were basically an auto club company that provided auto club and insurance programs to small businesses, farmers, that type of thing. In the early 80s, we started a roadside assistance business where we provided roadside assistance to a lot of the auto manufacturers. So companies like Lexus, Infiniti, Jaguar, BMW. Pretty well every vehicle today has some kind of auto club attached to it. That's what NAL was back then as well. In the mid 80s, we sat down with a number of truck drivers to develop plans specifically to help them out because they really didn't have anything. So NAL Truck Division was formed. And that was sold in, it was NAL Truck Division, which became National Truck League. That was sold in 92. I actually went to work for NTL in 1994 and then I just came back to NAL. Now it's been 10 years.
Yeah, I know you've been back for what seems like a long time. I mean, we go back to your NTL days. That's when I first met you.
Yeah.
When I was with TNT, and we were purchasing the product from NTL in those days.
So what was that? That'd be 20.
A long time ago.
We, I was dark haired and you had actual hair.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, it was a long time ago. It's 25 years, maybe.
Well, time flies.
A good history, a good relationship. I think you and I have developed. And one of the things we were talking earlier about COVID-19. I was so happy that you and NAL came out with a clear and concise statement as to coverage for owner-operators during this pandemic. Can you elaborate on that? Are owner-operators covered?
Yeah, so we when this first hit the press and stuff, we were very proactive and reached out to our provider to make sure that that our drivers were covered. We've always seen them as essential workers, and you know what they do for us. I gotta say thank you, because you know a lot of us are locked up in our homes and we're still getting our things because of the drivers that are out, you know, picking up and delivering for us, and you know they're risking things, right? So. COVID is covered, providing they don't have symptoms before they go to the States. And I think a lot of the providers last week that originally has said, hey, we're not going to cover COVID-19 has changed, basically saying because it is an essential service now. And as long as a driver doesn't have COVID symptoms going into the States, they're going to be covered under the policy.
I think that's super, because do we need trucking right at the moment? You know,
well, it is. It's you know, the travel advisory was the big thing that a lot of the policies had, which our plan does not have a travel advisory based on a government coming in and saying, hey, don't travel. We've got a travel advisory for war and a few other things, but this was pretty key. So, you know, we're recommending, because there's still some uncertainty out there with some of the other individual plans. I think all the group companies have said, hey, no, we are going to cover this off there again if somebody doesn't have symptoms going into the U.S. But I think the key thing for a fleet to do is if they have a bunch of individual plans out there, that they need to speak to the broker and get, you know, confirmation that it is going to cover them.
Yeah, I would think that would be a huge undertaking, because there are, you know, NAL is one company, but you have a great deal of competition. There's a number of other companies out there that provide similar or pretend to provide similar coverage. However, as I say, I was just so happy that NAL came out right at the beginning and said, no, owner-operators, you are covered in the States, keep trucking.
Yes.
Yeah, because there was a lot of negative news. I think I've told you, you know, my daughter works on a cruise ship, so there's a lot of people on cruise ships and stuff that were facing travel insurance that all of a sudden they didn't have travel insurance any longer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pretty scary week last week. I think a lot of that's been cleared up, but key factor is, hey, you know, if you're uncertain, or be certain by calling your broker and your insurance company to get verification.
Yep.
Because I think there are still a few out there that are that may be in the gray area.
You know. Anyways, I just wanted to say thanks to NAL for tackling it head on right at the beginning, in answering that question. One of the things that I'm really proud of NAL, and of course I have no affiliation with NAL, but is your Healthy Trucker program. As we get through this epidemic, our health has become really important, and I don't even know how many years ago did NAL start the Healthy Trucker program.
I think it's 7 years ago now, and kind of the main reason we got into it was we're TCA members, and at the time we were down, and there was at the convention, like 90% of what they talked about was the health of the driver at that conference. A number that came up was pretty scary, was the number 61. Any idea what that significance of that number has to our industry today?
Is it the age of the truck driver?
It's got to do with age.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. Sadly, it's the average lifespan of a long haul driver in the U.S. right now.
Ooh.
That's a Harvard study, which, and there again, we've been debated on that study. Some people say it's 62, 63, whatever. But the Harvard study basically said the average lifespan of a long-haul trucker in the U.S. is 61, which is sad because the average American male lives to be 76. So there's a huge shortfall. So we got pretty worried. Our average age of our client is about 55, and you know, we noticed that claims were kind of going through the roof, and a lot of it had to do with the health of the owner-operator, right? So their lifestyle. There's something called disease, that if you sit for long periods of time, that you have the same risk of heart attack and stroke as somebody that smokes. So think about a driver that's sitting for long periods of time and smoking at the same time. The risks are even higher.
Yep.
So our goal with Healthy Trucker was to basically get a driver more active and eating healthier. And, we started off with, you may remember the Fitbit challenge we did for a lot of fleets where drivers and staff would get Fitbits. We'd have walking challenges. I know we did it down at the TCA conference where we had all the executives competing. And when we came back, we decided to run a walk around the world challenge with the entire industry. And we thought we'd probably do it in about 3 months. We had so many people involved in it. We did it in, I think, 23 days. So that was pretty cool. But the challenge with the Fitbit with the driver is this. Companies were putting up prizes, a lot of times big prizes. And the problem with the Fitbit is it's not necessarily steps that they were getting, but the vibration of the steering wheel was throwing the Fitbit off. So guys were getting 30,000 steps and not getting out of the truck. So we kind of scrapped the idea of it, even though it was a great challenge that we had tons of people involved in, and we got all kinds of press on it. We got involved a little bit later. Drivers were saying, I want to know how to eat properly on the road. So we created an app called Healthy Team. Drivers would take pictures of their meals, diet, and exercise and post it. We had a leaderboard. Problem with the leaderboard was they were getting points based on an actual picture, not actually on having a healthy item in that picture. So that idea kind of got scrapped, even though it went very well for most. So now we just coach them through email and videos and on the phone, just to small changes over time is what Andrea says will create lasting change. So it's not a diet. It's a lifestyle change.
Yeah, which I got to believe that's huge. If you can manage to change a person's lifestyle, it's for life, and that is going to, as you said, what's the average age of truckers now?
Well, you're looking at 55 to 57, depending on what study that you're looking at. But so it's and it's not just physical health. A healthier driver mentally and physically is going to be a safer driver. As you know, it's going to have fewer accidents. They're going to lose less time from work due to injury, illness, and they're basically going to stick around in the industry longer. So, our partnership with Morneau Chappelle has been another big thing where we can give them access to counseling 24/7 for things to do with stress, depression, anxiety. Because if a driver's got something on his mind, he's got nothing but miles to think about that issue. So getting them support that way is kind of key.
Well, that's really interesting, because I didn't know in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis that we're having that you offered mental health counseling, because I'm sure there's a lot of people. I know I'm feeling the stress. I'm self-employed. My wife is self-employed. We've got no income at the moment. It can be a stressful time.
Absolutely.
Owner-operators are self-employed. If they're working at the moment, that's one thing, but there's a lot of factories that have shut down as well. And of course, that could cause a different type of stress, because not all of trucking is going crazy at the moment, as the food guys are and some of the other segments.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, and there again, I'm not an expert when it comes to mental health by any means, but it is a very challenging time for everybody right now. So having access to a program through either an EAP through your work, a lot of companies have that, where you get access to counseling 24/7, where you can call and speak to somebody. That's very important. We really stress the importance of, if you've got something on your mind, to obviously talk to somebody, and don't talk to a lot of them don't want to speak to their dispatch. They want to speak to somebody that they can get some help with.
I didn't realize that was available. That's awesome.
So a lot of there again, most employee driver packages would have access to EAPs, an employee assistance plan. We do have some of our fleets that have purchased the extended version of Healthy Trucker that does include the mental wellness as well. We got another unique one that we're working on as well, where a driver can get access to speak to a doctor out of the cab of their truck. which is kind of cool. Instead of trying to, they can't find a place to park their truck at a clinic. So this is where they can, it's like a Skype call where they can speak to a Canadian doctor and talk about their symptoms, and certain prescriptions can be written for that as well. So that's a plan that we're kind of working on as well for clients. Sorry, I hope that didn't sound like a pitch.
Yeah, no, but like owner operators, they need, answer this. Why do owner operators need coverage? A third party insurance such as what you provide, but not necessarily just yours, but why do they need the coverage?
So it's a good question. Now, are you talking about like the WSIB alternative solutions?
Yes.
Okay, so in Ontario, in Quebec, owner operators that own their vehicles, pay their truck, have an opportunity for profit and loss, have the opportunity of opting out of WSIB. CSST is a little different, but in Ontario, there's a form called an 1149A or 1157A that an owner operator completes. They send it in with their documents of ownership, articles of incorporation, and it's signed by both the fleet and the owner operator. They would get a letter back from the board that deems their status as independent. And then they got three options. They can buy personal coverage through WSIB, which not a lot do because of the costs, I think. They have access to private coverage, which would be us or other companies, or really WSIB doesn't care if they do get another plan in place, because all they've said is you're independent now, you have independent status, therefore you're off WSIB. Key thing is only owner operators that complete that form can opt out of WSIB. All other drivers, regardless of their contract, still require WSIB under the Act. The other thing is when you look at why you put coverage in place is the auto policy has something called statutory accident benefits. So primary insurance premiums are sky high as it is. So the last thing, and if an owner operator is disabled in a truck-related vehicle or accident, they have the option of filing a claim under something called the statutory accident benefits. So things like medical, loss of earnings, that type of thing is all available to them. It's key that when they're buying a package, they look for something that's going to be long-term, not just short-term, but something that's going to be long-term, very similar to what WSIB would provide. Key factors, you want to have something that's going to be first payer, meaning it's not going to direct the policy or direct the benefit back to the carrier's auto policy. And get something that's going to cover stable pre-existing conditions, especially with the whole COVID stuff. So I think that was maybe a longer answer, but...
Well, you brought up two things I want to dig a little bit deeper into. First payer, okay. Can you explain that in layman's terms so that an owner-operator can understand what first payer means and the effect that if the insurance policy isn't the first payee, or however you properly say it, how does that affect the owner-operator? Okay,
so most policies when it comes to disability benefits are set up as first payer. There are some that are set up as second payer, meaning if you have other insurance that you can go to, i.e. the carrier's auto policy, then they're going to push you to that policy. But as I said, most of the companies that are selling to owner-operators today, with the exception, I think, one or maybe two, have first payer status. A lot of them, however, have second payer status when it comes to medical. So things like physio, chiro, that's it, the major things. When it comes to vehicle-related accidents, a number of them have a second payer clause that would actually push that benefit back to the carrier's auto policy. Where it's been very troubling is obviously captives, insurance companies, that they're responsible for the first $10 to $50 to $100,000. These are getting hit by these medical claims, which it's the fleet's money or the insurance company's money as well. So that can be a challenge.
That's all interesting. I mean, my background was Old Republic in the old days. I know we were always concerned about these third-party insurance providers like yours who weren't first payee, because it would get thrown back onto ours, and then we have to recoup through premium from the trucking company.
The biggest one you look at is travel medical. That there are some providers that are excess only, meaning they would kick it back to the carrier's auto policy. And that's where the bills can be substantial. We had one bill, one guy that was involved in an accident in Texas that I think he was getting out of his truck and he got hit by another vehicle. He was in a coma for a while. The bill was well over $700,000 US. Plus, he's got, with all his benefits from weekly indemnity or monthly indemnity and the medical, it's well over $1 million now. If our policy would have said excess, that would have all gone back to the carrier's auto policy. And the trucking company only had, I think, 23 trucks, so 23 owner-operators. So that would have been devastating to the truck insurance provider, right? They wouldn't have been able to get insurance.
Yeah. And insurance in today's market, I'm sure you're well aware of it for the trucking industry, it is a challenge to keep your premiums under control. Now, the other part of the question, besides first payee, you alluded to it, but you didn't come right out and say it. The Driver Inc. model that's very popular today. If I'm a driver that's incorporated and I'm getting paid as self-employed, do I qualify to opt out of WSIB and purchase a third-party equivalent or something similar to WSIB?
So does the Driver Inc. driver own the truck?
No, I would say the company owns the truck.
And do they pay the fuel, the majority of expenses? Do they have an opportunity for profit and loss?
No, they're basically a driver that's incorporated that's receiving direct pay. They're not paying for the repairs. They're not paying for the fuel.
So to opt out of WSIB in the province of Ontario, they have to be able to complete the 1149A that states that they own the truck, they pay the fuel, they have an opportunity for profit and loss, and they don't get a T4A. And none of that falls into place for a Driver Inc. driver. So they're covered under WSIB. They have to be covered under WSIB.
Yeah, so, and that's a really good point. Hopefully people understand that Driver Inc. basically are not eligible for this. And you mentioned the T4A. Hopefully companies are issuing when required, when it's the correct form to be doing, because Glenn, you and I pay taxes. And of course we want everyone to pay their fair share of taxes, what is legally required. So
100%, yeah.
And
CTA and OTA have done a great job as bringing this to the forefront, and there's been a lot of action that's taken place. And we'll see how that plays out this year.
Yep. As we head into the middle of 2020 and even 2021, I think it's going to be a long road to hammer this Driver Inc. model the way CTA would like it. But it is an ongoing battle, and it's going to continue, which is fine. Glenn, to be respectful of your time, I think. What haven't we talked about yet that we should be discussing?
Obviously the COVID's a huge top. That's one key thing. Have fleets speak to their broker. When you're allowing your owner-operators to opt out of WSIB, our recommendation is to do something through settlement deduction. Obviously, to ensure coverage is not only purchased, but more importantly, maintained. That's kind of the biggest thing right now. And we're recommending fleets come up with a minimum standard of coverage of what coverage should look like to ensure or reduce the risk and exposure as a fleet. So they're not going to have these claims filed against the auto policy. That's kind of the big thing. The retention, we're not sure what's going to happen in the next little while with the economy. So sometimes owner-operators are the first to kind of get laid off. We're hoping that doesn't take place, obviously. But if we can get this economy turned around quickly, I think everybody's going to kind of maintain what's going on right now within the industry.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm very hopeful. I do see a hit to the economy, obviously, when so many of us are shut down and hunkered in our homes. But when those restrictions are released, I think there's going to be a pent-up demand. I also think there's going to be some huge changes going forward, just and I'm thinking specifically of people now getting groceries delivered, for instance. Oh, I didn't, I knew it was available before, but I never really used it. And then they use it and they go, damn, this is convenient. I'm going to continue to use this.
100%.
So I think there's going to be significant changes coming forward because we're all doing things. This podcast was up and running before COVID started, but it's relatively new. I think you're going to see a flood of other podcasts like this come up because all of a sudden we realize, hey, we can do this virtually.
Yes, 100%. I've already started doing virtual meetings now with fleets because our business is a lot of it's face to face, where they want to see you and they want to kind of talk and ask the proper questions, and we're starting to do more of under Zoom is what we're using, but there's all kinds of things that you can do to stay connected.
Yeah, and even my business model, I'm wondering how much time, face-to-face time I need to have now. Anyway, it's all going to be interesting. We're all going to get through this. It's going to be an interesting period of time, but I guess I'm an optimist. I know we will get through it and we will survive.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
well, we've been around long enough. We've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly a few times. So we know it's going. We're hunkering down. We know we're kind of prepared for what's going to take place, and we hope most people are as well.
Yeah, I think everybody is. Glenn, I want to thank you for coming on. It was a great interview. I took away, again, first payee. I learned about that. I didn't know about the healthy trucker and in some cases the mental health that it also extends to if your company has purchased that. And I think during this crisis, that's a huge thing. And, we touched on the Driver Inc. model and why owner-operators really need a coverage, third-party payee coverage like an NAL product. But as you mentioned, there are a number of things there. The companies, I like the idea of settlement deduction because that way that has been paid for. And I think as we come out of this thing, some people will be looking for ways to cut out expenses.
Well, with the struggles now, where things have slowed down a little bit, sometimes insurance is the first thing to go. And I hate, or it's difficult for a fleet when they're trying to gather certificates of insurance every month or every quarter to ensure coverage has been maintained. It's do it through settlement deduction. Come up with that minimum standard. I can send you a copy of what we use and a lot of the insurance companies are using for that minimum standard if you want to share it with listeners. And it's in a way it's tough love, saying, hey guys, we want you to have protection. We want you to have a specific criteria. Here's one that meets it. If you've got one that does meet this criteria, by all means show it and we'll allow you to keep it. That's what we're suggesting to fleets. So they're not necessarily forcing them to take one specific plan, but force them to take a minimum criteria. Yeah,
and I think that would be great. What I'll do is is that the minimum criteria, is that on your website?
I've got it in an article on my website, but I've got it in a document that basically shows who can opt out, who can't, what to look for, and then what the minimum criteria should look like.
All right, I'll figure out a way to put it, a link to somewhere, whether it be my website or yours,
okay,
so that people can, if they want it, they can click on the link below. That'll be in the show notes, and that's a freebie from Glenn.
Sweet.
All right. Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it so much.
All right. I appreciate it, Chris. Stay healthy to everybody. Stay healthy, wash your hands, do everything we got to do. And you know what? Stay isolated. That's the only way we're going to get this thing kicked.
Yeah. All the best, buddy. Thanks.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
I hope you loved the show as much as I did. That was a great interview, and I thank you for hanging in there to the end. Please leave us a like, a thumbs up, a review, a comment, a rating if it is in your heart. Thank you so much. And I do really appreciate your time. And join us again next week for another exciting interview.